Any advice for mothers raising young boys? Well, whatever your tolerance is for risk with your son, back off from that about 25%. Your moms have a good sense of danger, but they're always overcalibrated on danger, always. Always. And, the kid can do with a little bit of danger. The kid can do with a little bit of risk. And the kid needs rough and tumble. Like, boys break stuff in order to just learn about them. And if you don't allow them to do that when they're young, then they will break stuff as adults. And it's far more of a problem. You don't want adult men breaking stuff in order to learn things for the first time. You want for that process to have happened on your watch. And you have to give leeway for that to happen. And so you're where you are calibrated on risk, like just sort of back off from that. Maybe your husband has you really dialed in, and so I don't want to override the husband, but you'll notice that wherever your tendency is, based on your upbringing and where you are and stuff like this, notice that your husband does pull the son, like he's sort of calibrated you on your risk tolerance with your son. He has kind of pulled you 25% in his direction now, hasn't he? Like that's fairly undeniable if you have an intact marital relationship. And so just as in yourself, like you want to notice that's the first thing that boys take to, is they take to breaking things and banging things and smashing things. And you really need them to be able to, you don't want to come down on them too much for that. Obviously, you don't want to spend a fortune replacing everything. That's too far in the other direction as well. But you need to know that your environment is a bit like fodder for their learning process. So you better, like, if you want to raise young kids and you have a museum full of Ming vases and all this, you're out of your mind, or you have like designer dogs, your little teacup chihuahua gets poked in the eye and has to have a $3,000 surgery or something like this, and then you're furious at your son. You're out of your mind. I mean, you can't do that with kids. Kids and especially boys need rough and tumble. So that is some advice, and then keep them away from the education system always. And don't be too hard on young boys. They're learning. Kids are not even to the age of reason until age 8. You can't even really reason with kids until they're about 8 or 9. They ask why and they ask questions, but they don't really start like thinking on their own and having their own inner life until they're 8 or 9. And so why come down hard in that early stage of development? I mean, why come down hard at all? But a lot of people do. They lose their patience and they forget to really like take a deep breath and just give it another year. The kid's not getting it now. Give it another year. That's the time frame when kids are young. They're not of the age of reason. Whereas a kid, when you can reason with them, they're especially they're 10, they're 11, they're 12, they're starting to go on. Like they'll remember the conversations and they'll prize the conversations, and they'll sort of like work that into their logic, and they'll be more conscientious. And but young boys, like, man, you gotta let those young boys ride. You gotta let them buck. You gotta let them be free. You gotta let them be wild, and that will always, there will be a refinement process in that, and it will not always be that way. And you're not gonna be frazzled and all this till kingdom come. It is a refinement process always. We have a civilizing process with kids, and coming down too hard on kids, it just turns them into assholes when they're older and they have power over people. You don't want to teach that to people. You want to be firm but fair. And firm does not mean rock hard. Firm means like like a leather motorcycle helmet or something. Before people were psychopaths and we're all jacked up on caffeine and driving like lunatics. Like it's like a good hard leather helmet, but it's not a space grade hardness. It's firm but fair. So there you go. That's some advice, some very general advice on raising young boys, but you'll do well if you heed it. I tell a lot of people, just heed the advice.